Oh, hey, did you want to build another Astro Server Island? Yeah, me too. Let's do it. I've been really digging on two things recently. That's all the new changes in Astro 5.0, but also the new social network, Bluesky. I've been on it for a few weeks. I've been really enjoying it, and the API is actually super easy to use. So let's combine those two things to make a server-rendered Astro Bluesky component. Now, Matt Kane, who's one of the core contributors over at Astro, has actually already built a Bluesky embed that can take any data into it and make a really nice user interface for it. This is going to, instead of statically rendering it though, render it at request with the server island. Let's take a look at how it works. All right, so here's a look at the finished product that we're going to build today. This is up on a Netlify server. We've got a couple Bluesky latest posts here, both my own and Astro's. So we're going to build a server island component that's going to be able to take a specific actor from Bluesky, put their latest post on the page, and do some really interesting stuff in the background as well to make it quick and to make it as honestly as cheap as possible as well. So to get started, we do need a starting point. You could use just the npm create Astro at latest, but I would recommend coming to the link I'll put in the description, which is the Astro Simple Start, which is a little project that I put together. You can either git clone this or you can use this command to get it. This is going to give you Astro 5.0 in the beta. It's going to have a couple of files in here and a little bit of styling so that we're all working from the same starting point. Again, as long as you're on the 5.0 beta, the latest beta, or if this is after 5.0 released, you can use just the regular old npm create Astro. Then you'll have a pretty decent time following along here. All right, so once you've got that installed, you see here I've got it kind of set up. We need to install a few more packages as well. The first thing being that we are going to be running Astro partially in SSR mode. We're going to have some server-side components because these are the server islands. So we do need to install an adapter. In this example, we're going to be using Netlify's adapter, so we need to install that. Now, the one thing to keep in mind with this install of the Netlify adapter is that we need the beta for this as well. So we're going to run npm install astro.js/netlify at the 6.0 beta 1. You can install this and then run the upgrade script. However, you're going to get a whole bunch of errors and you're going to have to go through a lot of process on that. So it's just best to install it manually, and I'll walk you through how to set up the configuration in a second. But we also need to install the actual embed that we're going to be using from Matt Kane as well. So at Astro Community, is what we're going to install here. So npm install at Astro Community Astro embed Bluesky. That's going to be the visuals that we've got. And then we also need to get Bluesky's API SDK for JavaScript as well. And that's at the @proto handle in npm. So npm install at @proto, which is a little bit weird, /API. All right, now that we have all those installed, we do need to configure our Astro installation to look for Netlify as well. So we're going to import Netlify from our Astro.js Netlify, and we're going to add that as an adapter in our configuration. This will tell it to use Netlify for our server rendered functions. So we can run npm run dev, and we should now get a local host, which you can see I've apparently been running too many Astro builds. So we're at 4324. So let's go ahead and pull that up locally as well. All right, so here we are. No server components necessary. Just what will you build today? So before we actually start working on our server island on that component, we're going to set up a utility to actually connect up with the @proto API. So in our source directory, let's add a new file and put it in utils/bluesky.ts. So to start with this, we're going to import the ATP agent from the @proto API package that we installed. Then we're going to set up an agent. So we're going to say const agent equals a new ATP agent, and we're going to pass in a configuration object here. In this case, we're going to tell it what service we want to use because the @proto protocol can have multiple services that you could potentially use. In our case, we're going to use the https://bsky.social as the service that we're using here. And that's going to connect it up to the Bluesky social network. And then we need to take that agent and we need to log in with it. Now to log in, we're going to need a few different things. We're going to need our identifier, which is basically our username on Bluesky. In this case, we'll use mine, brob.dev. You can find me on Bluesky there. And then we're going to need a password to log in as well. So to get this, we're actually going to head on over to Bluesky and go into our settings area. And in here, we can go to the privacy and security and create a new app password. All you have to do is click it here. It'll let you name it, and then you can allow or disallow for direct messages. I would recommend no direct messages for this because we don't need it, and that's a little bit sketchy in my opinion. And then to use that, I'm actually going to set up an environment variable file. So we're going to set up a .env file in our project, and I'm going to set this as a Bluesky password. Set that equal to the key that we get from there. I'm going to edit out the actual password here, but just know that I've saved it in and you hooligans can't find it. So then to use that instead of a string here, we're going to actually pass it the import.meta.env the Bluesky password key here. And that's going to take the Bluesky password from the .env file and put it right here for us to use. And then we can export the default agent here. So that's going to actually take the agent that we logged in as and pass it into wherever we're using it in our components. Speaking of components, we can now create our Bluesky component. So in our components directory, we're going to create a new file called bluesky.astro. Naming convention wise, I like capitals. You can name it whatever you want as long as you're consistent. And then we're going to use some front matter and we're going to have an actual display down here. All right, so in our front matter, we're going to import a few different things. First, we're going to need that agent that we just created from our utils/Bluesky file. And we also need to get that Bluesky post from the package we installed earlier. So we're going to have a Bluesky post, which is going to be an Astro component from @Astro community/Astro embed Bluesky. And then the very first thing that we need to do before we do anything else, because we are operating in hybrid mode in Astro, which means that all of our files are automatically going to be pre-rendered as HTML and served as HTML files, we need to let Astro know that we want this to be a server rendered component. To do that, we're going to export a const for the pre-render. And we're going to set pre-render equal to false. That's going to tell it not to pre-render this as an HTML file and instead let this be an SSR function. Then we can jump right in and we can go ahead and start getting data back from Bluesky here. So we can say const, I know that we're going to get data back equals, we're going to await the agent to go and get author feed. There's a lot of things in the agent that you can use. In this case, we want to get an entire feed from a specific author. To tell it what author we want to get it from, we're going to pass an actor property to it. In this case, I want it to be my posts as well. So we'll do brob.dev. And then I could use the default here for the amount we get back, but that's 50, and that's an awful lot. And we do want this to be quick because it is going to be running on the server. So we're going to limit this to just one post because we want the latest in this case. So then we're going to actually set up our posts. We're going to const post equals, and we're going to get that data. We're going to get the feed from that. In this case, it's still going to be an array. It's just an array of one item. And we're going to get the 0th item off of that, which is that singular item that we've got. And then I happen to know that there's a post on that. So that's actually all that we need to get our Bluesky post up and running. So we're going to get the Bluesky component, Bluesky post component, and we're going to pass it a post. That post is going to be that data that we got, that data object that we got back. And then we just self-close this. And then theoretically, that's all that we need, but we do need to add this to our home page. So we'll go over to our pages and go to the index.astro, and we're going to include this on the home page. So we'll have our Bluesky server component this time, not Bluesky post, and we're going to use server:defer to tell Astro that we want this to be a server island and not one that is rendered at build time. So we'll save that in. Head on back to our local host, and you can see it automatically pulls in here, ready to go, my singular post, which I actually prepped before this. I actually reposted this on Bluesky, so it would be here. So this is actually pulling in, ready to go here. However, you might have noticed earlier that we are getting a little squiggle here, right? We don't want that. And that's some type issues. This will bite you if you try to push this up to Netlify, because Netlify is going to treat this as a more strict TypeScript setting. So we need to do a little bit of work to make sure that we have the type correct. And that's due to a small bug in this package where the typing for Bluesky's app Proto API is different from the Zod typing that the content collections work on in Astro. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to import the type from the Bluesky Post package. So you can see here we're going to have import type post from, we have to go into our node modules, unfortunately, the Astro community, Astro embed Bluesky. In the source directory, there is types. Now I could do this as any number of other ways. I think this is just the easiest and most secure way of doing it. And then we're going to cast our const of post as a post from that type. So you can see that does solve our squiggle, and that will make it so that Netlify will publish this no problem. All right, so we're not completely done, because while this is great that I'm getting my posts, what if you wanted to use this to have multiple latest posts from multiple authors? You'd have to do something very different here with this brob.dev area. So instead of pulling this in from brob.dev, we're actually going to set our own actor variable, and we're going to set that using Astro's props. So we're going to set const of actor equal to astro.props. And then we need to actually pass that in the installation where we're actually instantiating this on the home page. You can see we already had the error, params must have a property of actor. So here we're going to say our actor is equal to brob.dev. Save that in, no more errors, and when we come here, we still have our post on the page. This will allow us, if we would like, to then have multiple posts on the page. Let's see what astro.build is doing on Bluesky right now. Let's save that in, and now we have two different ones, one for me and one for the latest from Astro. So that's pretty cool. We can actually have as many of these as we want on the page. But that brings us to an issue. Now, in the end, this is a bit slow and it could become expensive. Now, I want to put this on my personal site, and I do get enough traffic that if this ran every single time somebody pulled up the website, the invocations of the serverless functions would grow and grow and grow, and it might take me out of the free tier. Not to mention, honestly, the speed of this is not great. You know, it's about 300 to 500 milliseconds per request, and it's going to cause some cumulative layout shift and all sorts of things that we don't want for our site. So this is actually a really great use case for Netlify's edge and durable caching, or whatever platform you're working on, but we're going to use Netlify here today. You can find a previous video that I made covering it on my channel, but also in the description below, where we talked about how durable caching works. And we're going to use that here today. And the cool thing is that not only does this work in the serverless functions like we used in that video, but they're also going to work with the modern version of Server Islands as well in the 5.0 beta. And the refinement that is just incredibly nice developer experience. So let's take a look at what it looks like to implement. So while we could code our headers by hand, that honestly sounds less than fun, especially since each CDN is going to have slightly different cache headers that it's going to want in various ways. So we're going to use another Matt Kane special. We're going to use the cdn-cache-control package that he has put together. It's a pretty excellent package that works on multiple CDNs and has very specific headers for each of them. You can see here in the example, there's a Netlify cdn-cache-control header as well. So let's go ahead and install this in. So npm install the cdn-cache-control header. And then we're going to use that in our component, which I think is an incredibly cool thing that we can do. We can actually use these things in our server islands, which is super helpful. So we're going to bring the cache headers constructor from the cdn-cache-control package. Then after we get our data in our post, we're going to set our headers. So in order to do that, we're going to set a new variable headers equal to a new cache headers method. Now we could just be done here. In fact, let's go ahead and console log that and take a look at what we get. Actually, let's call it headers because we're going to have multiple of them. Headers. Save that in. Refresh the page so it hits it again. And you can see we get multiple cache headers, CDN cache control, and just cache control. Now you might be wondering, where is the Netlify aspect of this? We saw that in the way that the examples were set up. We actually do need to set another environment variable here to the CDN environment variable. So in this case, and I'll blank this out, we set a CDN variable here, and we're going to set this to equal Netlify. And that's going to tell the package what sort of CDN we're working on. So we save all this again, and when the islands reload, you can see that we also now get the Netlify CDN cache control header, and we do get that durable property here, and that's going to be very important for how we do things later. But we've got some max age issues where they're actually setting it for a year and a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, I make more posts than a year, so let's do a few additional things. And the great thing about the cache control package is that you can chain things together to make it a little bit easier to use. So in this case, one of the things I want to make sure that we do is set this to stale while revalidate. And what that's going to do is it's going to, when we go stale in our cache, which we'll get to when that happens in a second, I want to serve the stale content back to my user while the revalidation happens in the background. I never want any of my users to get the 1 second issue or the 0.5 second issue. I want them all to get the stale version while we get the modern version in the background. So that's what the SWR method does here. It's going to add the stale while revalidate. And then we're going to add in a TTL. And this is going to be the time that we're going to cache this for. And I've personally kind of decided that 1800 is about right for my posts. That's about a 30-minute cache. I might play around and make it an hour later on, or maybe even longer than that when I put this on my personal site. But you decide how frequently you want this cache to be broken. And then if you want to ever update this to break the cache with maybe a purge cache function that you write, if you want to know more about that, you can check my Netlify durable cache video that I made a few weeks back. You can actually send some tags here as well that can actually allow for this to be broken. So let's send a few strings. We're going to have one that is just all posts. So if I had multiple of these going, I want to be able to kill all of them. And then also have one that is going to be our post that we're setting right now, which is going to be our actor from here. So I'm actually going to say, anywhere that we have a Bluesky island that is from this actor, let me actually kill it and purge that cache right now. So that will allow for all of the brob.dev ones to be purged in a different timeline than the Astro ones in our case here. So we'll save that in, take a look at the cache at the console log. You can see all that comes in. We get our cache tags. We get our stale while revalidate, which is set to actually a week, but that's fine because it's going to happen pretty fast no matter what. And we get our max age of 1800 so that when it can be served fresh for up to 30 minutes. From there, we actually need to pass these back when Astro is updating, when Astro is actually calling the server island. So to do that, Astro actually has a headers.set method, but it's only going to take one header at a time. So we do need to loop through the headers that we have here. So I'm going to do a for each on these, where I take the value and the key from each, and then I'm going to return just an astro.response.headers.set. I'm going to set it to the key and the value. And that's going to actually set each header for me as it goes through and pass it to the CDN and pass it to the browser as we go forward. So I'll save that in, come back to the browser, and we open up the network panel and refresh. Anytime you want to go look and see one of these islands, you can actually find it by its component name. So here's one of the Blueskys. And you can see that we do get the must revalidate and things like that. And we get the Netlify cache tag, cdn-cache-control all set and ready to go here. And then the other thing we might want to do, since we're already getting from the props some values, let's go ahead and also grab a cache time value as well. And I'm going to set a default of 1800 on this just because I know that's what I want. And we're going to, instead of having the TTL be set to 1800, we're going to set it to cache time. And that's going to allow us to, in our actual instantiation, let's say Astro is updating constantly and I want to set a cache time different on this than I had on on my personal one. I could actually set this to say 5, and it's going to actually set that header to have that TTL of 5 seconds instead of 1800. So while we can kind of see this in play on the local version, I am going to go ahead and go up to the server side one that I have here, and you can see it is taking a second to load. And I, of course, missed getting it here, but as we reload, you can see it didn't take a second there. And that's because in our cache status, we are getting an edge hit on this, and we are getting the age set, which is set to 5. And if I refresh and pull that up again, you can see one of them is set to 1300 for the age, with the TTL still remaining here. And then the other one only has an age of 14. And that's because the Astro component is set to that 5. You can see that we are getting a stale aspect here. And that means that when we refresh this page, we will get a new version of this because it's beyond that 5-second age. So we come in, you can see the age is 24 on that one, 1346 on that one. So it's still coming through as stale, but we can get new ones as we go. See, the age has gone back to 10, but we're still getting stale because it's not within that 5 seconds. So I get the stale one, but it's stale compared to 5 seconds ago as opposed to stale compared to 5 minutes ago. We can keep refreshing and we'll keep seeing that. You can see the first one is still waiting to revalidate. It's still hitting every time. And we are getting stale in the background here with different ages depending on how long we've been waiting in between each post. 10 seconds. Let's see if we can get, there we go, age of 2, and we did get a hit this time. So that's because that 5-second delay is a very, very short one. I probably would never recommend doing one of these at 5 seconds. It's not meant to be that up to date. All right, so that's it. Not too bad for injecting just a tiny bit of interactivity into your project and keeping everything else static, while keeping the server island super speedy as well and super cheap with that caching. So if you have any questions, do post them in the comments below or let me know if you have implemented it on your Astro site.